Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tech Gamers World. In this video, we're going to do some virtual flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We're going to be flying from Boston to New York City in a Hughes H-4 Hercules, otherwise known as the Spruce Goose. So, let's get it started. So everybody's familiar with the Spruce Goose. It was a short-lived, massive airplane that was used for heavy transport. They actually called it a flying boat. And what it was it gave you the ability to take off and land in water. There was only one aircraft, only made one brief flight in 1947, and that was it. But it was a really awesome plane and has since fallen into aviation history. So, we're going to fly it today in Microsoft Flight Simulator because it's a really fun plane to fly. So let's get it started here. So this is Microsoft Flight Simulator, being played on a Microsoft Xbox Series X, and we're flying today with the Thrustmaster T.Flight HOTAS 1 flight stick, and Thrustmaster T.Flight rudder pedals, which are located down on the floor. So I love this flight stick. It is just awesome. There's a ton of videos on my channel showing how to configure and fly with this amazing flight stick. I've got thousands of hours with it across multiple games, and it's just awesome. So I've got my Xbox controller here. We're going to go ahead here and get this set up. So we're going to set up a world flight. Now, we're going to set our departure and destination locations here. So we're going to go up to Boston, Logan International Airport. And the one thing that's special, and a lot of people don't know, is Logan International Airport actually has what's called a water runway. Right here. It's very short runway, technically short. That is in the harbor there, the river, right next to Logan International Airport. So we're going to go ahead here and select this as our takeoff place. So we're going to hit 14W runway, set as departure. So 14 water, it's 2,500 feet of water, but obviously you can go past that a little bit. But that area is designated as a runway. Now, what we need to do is go ahead and head down to New York City here. So there's Cape Cod, there's Manhattan, New York City, and we're going to select our landing location as LaGuardia. Now there are 3 water runways at LaGuardia. We're going to select this runway right here. This will be our arrival. The water runway, the southwest facing water runway here, because it's nice and long, gives us lots of clearance. So with that said, our starting point is set, our destination is set. Now let's go ahead and select our aircraft. So we're already set here on the Hughes Aircraft Company's Hercules H-4. I don't think there's any other liveries for this one, just that color. Weight and balance, fuel, 50%, failures, everything is set for normal. Our customizations are set. Aircraft is set. So we are ready to fly here. Sorry about that. So we're going to go ahead here and check the weather. Weather is set for real time. Live players, live traffic. And we are ready to fly. So while we're waiting here, if you could click that like button and subscribe to Tech Gamers World, I'm always going to have new and exciting content from the worlds of video games and flight simulators dropping all the time. And I would love for you to be a part of my adventures. I love everything about Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's just such a cool game. I've been playing it for years and years and years across multiple platforms. Whether it's the original Flight Simulators, War Thunder is a really good one. Ace Combat, there's a ton of them out there. The Thrustmaster T.Flight HOTAS 1 flight stick works with a lot of them. So let's get our takeoff clearances going here. Alright. So we are ready. So now, let me show you what this plane looks like here, just so you can see how big it actually is. Look at the size of this thing. It is huge. It's got 8 engines on this thing, 4 on each side. And as you can see, it is purely a water aircraft. There's no way to land on any kind of runway other than something on the water. So, let's go ahead here and get back in position. We're going to fly most of this flight today through the cockpit. I'll switch around periodically to give you some external views if we see anything cool. So let's do our tests. Throttle her to throttle up, so we know the engines are running. There goes that plane landing. Let's check flight controls, elevators. Everything looks good. Checking the rudder. Checking rudder pedals. Everything looks good. So we are ready to fly. Now, like I said, we're going to be flying today from Logan International Airport to LaGuardia, right outside of New York City, and we'll land in the water there. So this is going to be pretty fun. The flight should take about, I would say, an hour or so. So, with that said, let's get to it, shall we? Alright, and here we go. So it's the full throttle. Show you just how we're starting to move here. That's how massive this plane is. Flaps are in takeoff position. Alright, let's get airborne here. And we have a positive rate. So let's put the flaps up. And let's begin. Gentle turn. To head towards LaGuardia. So in the 1940s, the Spruce Goose was developed by a conglomeration, actually, of 2 different people. It was made by a boat manufacturer and an aircraft manufacturer. And it was originally designed to be used in World War II to ferry equipment and troops overseas. Because in the early start of World War II, the United States shipping was getting wrecked by the German U-boats operating over there, which made it very difficult to operate. So Henry J. Kaiser was a leading Liberty shipbuilder, partnered with Howard Hughes to create the largest aircraft in the world, the Spruce Goose. And it was called the Hughes H-4 flying boat, basically. You can see all 8 engines are operating at 100%. You can see just how slow our airspeed actually is. Here, we're going to pass 3,000 feet. Heading southwest towards New York City. So the original Spruce Goose, the only Spruce Goose, was made almost entirely of wood because of the lack of ability of metals that were used for wartime. So aluminum, steel was really hard to find because the war effort made it, necessary to repurpose towards the war machine. So the original plane was made entirely of wood, almost. The elevators and rudders were fabric covered to protect them from damage because, wood's not as strong as metal. So the Spruce Goose was not actually liked by a lot of people. Howard Hughes disliked the name of the Spruce Goose, so it was also called the HK-1. So Howard Hughes Kaiser 1. It was a mix of the two of them. And I don't know, I think it's an awesome airplane. It's just really cool looking. And Kaiser, the boat guy, never actually hung around long enough to see the completion of the plane. He quit 16 months in to the contract because he didn't like the way the things were proceeding. So Hughes continued on his own, and then eventually it became the Hughes H-4 Hercules. He removed the Kaiser name from it. And he got himself a new government contract to produce one production plane, which is what you see. So when the aircraft began to near completion, they had to figure out where exactly to store it. So what they did was they erected a giant hangar around the partially completed flying boat, and then they built ramps to launch it into the harbor, because remember, this plane, as you can see, has no landing gear. So it had to go right into the water. So in Long Beach, California is where it was originally manufactured, and the test flight occurred, the only flight occurred. So this plane basically cost, the equivalent of like, I think it was like something like $250 million in 2024 dollars to build, which was a lot of money back in the day. And a lot of people don't know this, during World War II, for example, the government, the U.S. government, specifically the Senate, was constantly investigating how government money was spent towards the war effort. So Howard Hughes was called to testify in 1947 for using government funds to, build this aircraft, and how he appropriated that money. Unfortunately, he never really got this plane to be used during the war effort, because the war ended before his test flight actually occurred. So it basically got flown once and then put on display. And they were fighting over it later in the 1960s, 1970s. There was constant fighting over who owned the aircraft while it was just sitting in storage. The government said they owned it because they essentially paid for it. So there was a debate over where it was going to be stored. The Smithsonian wanted it because, government funded stuff like that. So it ended up getting settled in Long Beach, California, in a large, giant dome that you could go and visit it. And then in the 1970s and 80s, Walt Disney World started getting interested in the area in California, and ended up acquiring the space that the plane was located in. But given that Disney's not really into that kind of stuff, they didn't want the plane there anymore. So they didn't want to display it, because what Disney was trying to do was they were making Port Disney, which was going to be a giant port for Disney ships and stuff like that, but it ended up getting scrapped. So they wanted the plane out of there. So the plane ended up settling in an odd location in where was it? McMinnville, Oregon, and they towed the plane by barge to get it there, because it obviously wasn't flight worthy at that point. So the plane was essentially transported by barge there, 40 miles southwest of Portland, Oregon, and reassembled by a company to make it look like it does today. And that was in 1993. So it took 138 days to move it from Long Beach to Oregon. The geodesic dome that originally housed the Spruce Goose is still there, and it's used by Carnival Cruise Lines as its Long Beach terminal. So you can go visit that if that's something you're interested in. And what's pretty cool too is the aircraft hangars that was used to protect this plane as it was being built. I should call it a plane, a boat, as it was being built, is now converted into sound stages, and they filmed a bunch of movies there. Titanic, most notably, ironically, was filmed there, which is pretty cool. So as you can see, you kind of got to pull back on the stick a lot here to keep this plane nose altitude here, because I'm getting pretty high. Altitude is around, we're at 14,000 feet here, so we're going pretty slow because of that. So I'm actually going to tilt the nose forward here. You can see this aircraft is very easy to fly. And it's a lot of fun to fly too. It's just very slow, lumbering, obviously, because it's so big. The general characteristics and specifications of this plane are actually really impressive. It only held a crew of 3 people could fly this plane. Its length was 218 feet long, which is enormous for a plane. Wingspan was 319 feet from wingtip to wingtip. The height is 80 feet. The fuselage height was 30 feet, which is huge. Empty weight, it weighed empty, just empty, and remind you, 250,000 pounds empty. The power plant, or the engines, were 8 Pratt & Whitney R43060 Wasp Major. They were 28-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engines. They produced 3,000 horsepower apiece. There was 8 of those. Think about that. 8 of them. The propellers were 4-bladed Hamilton standard, 17 foot by 2 inches diameter constant speed propellers. So that's, you know, a lot of power. Cruise speed was 250 miles per hour. Range 3,000 miles. And the service ceiling, or the max height they suggest you could fly this plane, was 20,000 feet. So, and a lot of reasoning for why this plane was so powerful and could fly so high was, twofold. One, needed to be able to transport things. This, like I said before, was envisioned as being a transport plane for the United States during World War II. They wanted to make troop carriers or transport carriers, but they needed to be able to land on water. So, because of obviously the oceans and stuff like that. Because remember, like I said, the United States was getting decimated, shipping was getting decimated by the German war machine. Until they were able to learn to track the U-boats, the initial part of the war was hit by significant losses. So the United States came up with various ideas, this being one of them. And now, today, we have massive cargo jets that dwarf this, but still, and can fly high and move tanks, weapons, armored transport, stuff like that. People around the world as needed. But in the beginning of World War II, that wasn't a thing. Your only way to get there was boat. So that contributed a lot to the development and manufacture of this plane. But unfortunately, it never really saw service just because of the time it took to make and all that other cool, stuff that went along with it. When the War Department in 1942, sanctioned the building of this plane, the materials needed just weren't there. So priorities meant that the aircraft could not be built with strategic materials, i.e. aluminum, which was the standard at the time. been 76 years since this plane flew. I would love to see someone make a new one and fly it again, but that probably won't happen. We're going to let the plane drop some altitude a little bit here, pick up some speed. See, it's just a beautiful day. A couple people out flying today. Fuel's at 37%. So we've exhausted 13% of our fuel, 14% of our fuel since we left. We're going to pass by Woodstock down there. See some of the avionics here. Very vintage looking. Over on this side here. Up on top. The landing lights. External doors. Whole fuel compartments. Engines. So you can switch from either side to fly on either side depending on which view you like. I like the left side. There were actually going to be 7 different designs for this plane with multiple engine configurations. So there were going to be twin hull and single hull designs, this obviously is being a single hull, and then 4, 6, and 8 wing mounted engines. So depending on what kind of configuration would be how much you could carry, how far you could fly. The final design chosen was this massive one, eclipsing any large transport then built. They were going to call it, they called it the Spruce Goose, also called the Flying Lumber Yard, which I thought was pretty cool. Hughes did not like the name Spruce Goose at all, so he called it the Flying Lumber Yard because it was made of wood. So this obviously is, you know, a metal-looking plane in this game, but the actual one was made of wood. I think the reason, you know, probably the reason they built it so large is because the government was trying to show off, you know, power to countries. You know, bigger is better, stronger is better, faster, can carry more. You know, it wasn't until Vietnam War that the bigger planes, the bigger bombers saw more action. You know, World War II was, they had the, you know, the planes that they invented that were to reach Germany and stuff like that, but that wasn't towards the end of the war. The beginning, it was more of the fighter jets and stuff like that. And then they used the fighters, not even fighter jets, the fighter propeller planes, to attack the German ships, the Japanese ships, more so towards the end with the Japanese, Midway, those kind of places where a lot of the fighting combat in the air ramped up. Obviously, of course, there was with the Germans, especially around like when Germany tried to invade London and stuff like that. And the thing with Germany was they were never really prepared for a air assault in their country because they just weren't ready for it. They didn't anticipate that the United States would be able to reach them. So when Berlin and all those countries started getting bombed, it really drove forward the need for Germany to fall. And between the Russian invasion from the east and the United States and the other Allied forces from the west, Germany just couldn't sustain themselves. So we're at 111 nautical miles to go here. A nice smooth ride. Traveling at about 100 knots. We can drop some altitude here and pick up some speed. Takeout taxi 83. Pickle given 40. Tubi rhubarb. Naughty V-ball 32. A couple people out flying here today. Passing below 15,000 feet. So as you can see, this is, like I said, Thrustmaster T.Flight HOTAS 1 flight stick. It is one of my favorite flight sticks to fly with. I have thousands of hours on this flight stick alone, and you can see just how agile and reactive this flight stick is. It bangs to the right, it bangs to the right, bangs to the left, bangs to the left. Pull back, push forward, rudder, rudder, throttle, throttle down, throttle up. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. I absolutely love this flight stick, and if you're interested in learning more about it, check out some of my other videos on my channel. I have a ton of videos about this flight stick, from use to maintenance to configurations, reviews, even an unboxing, the original unboxing video. It's just an awesome all-around flight stick with a great entry point, price point. I think you can get these for like 80 bucks now, 80, 90 bucks. Maybe 100 tops on Amazon. Best Buy has them. They'll probably start to disappear as the years go by, but right now you can still get them. As we get closer to New York City, we're going to see more and more people probably flying, because people tend to congregate around the big cities. The multiplayers like to fly around the big cities. So we're at 103 nautical miles here. You know, I think it's unfortunate that this plane never got to see service in World War II. I really think it would have been an excellent asset to the United States war effort, but they didn't. What I never understood in researching this plane is why didn't the government allocate metal to build this plane? Kaiser, that's what frustrated Kaiser so much, is that he blamed the restrictions for the taking so long to build. And Hughes wanted everything to be perfect, so it was a mix of both. Hughes wanted perfection, the government didn't want to provide the metal needed to build the plane, so it delayed the project until Kaiser finally said the heck with it and called it quits. And what's funny, here's something pretty cool about this plane. So this plane was made from what's called, the Spruce Goose was made from what's called laminated wood. So if you've ever seen laminated wood, you have seen it before. Floors, IKEA, they use a lot of that stuff nowadays. Basically what it is, it's strips of wood that were put together, ironed, heated, and fused together. So they made factories to make this kind of wood in World War II because they had to replace the metals they couldn't get. So typically if you needed aluminum, you needed a sheet of aluminum, you could just get it from the factory, no problem. Not when World War II happened. All the companies around the country were dedicated to building equipment for the war machine. You would have thought that, and I don't know, maybe I just think different. You would have thought that if the government really wanted this plane, they would have pushed war effort towards it, because it would have had massive benefits for the war effort in Europe. "92 nautical miles away." Take a look down at the floor here. Passing over the Salmon River soon. Miles away here. Someone invited me to play War Thunder. We're going to drop down some altitude here and fly closer to the ground and have a little fun as we fly this plane. Throttle back a little bit here. Max airspeed of this aircraft is only like 200 knots, so we got to be careful that we don't go too fast. Keep in mind, the bigger the plane, the harder they are to turn. So your turning radius is wider, slower. Can't go too fast or the plane will break apart. Passing about 10,000 feet. We'll drop down to about 5,000 feet. And we'll fly down lower for the remainder of this flight. Passing 10,000 feet. Let's put her into a dive, shall we? Can't do that much because the max speed is so bad, so low. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people flying around today. Passing 8,000 feet. We'll do another quick dive here. Gotta be super careful of those forward speed here, not to exceed the max this plane can handle. So if you look at the airspeed on the bottom left, where it says 200 kts, that is the max speed for this aircraft. So we'll level off here shortly. Altitude, we'll level off right around here, 5,000 feet. And then as we get closer, we'll go down even lower. Fuel's okay, 35%. Wood farm down there. Dave 343 up there's 30,000 feet. That guy's moving. Take out taxi 83. We're about 70 nautical miles away from LaGuardia. What do you guys like to fly in when you fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator? drop a comment down below and tell me what it is that you like to fly, and let's talk about it. I respond to most comments in pretty timely manner. Like I said, I love everything about Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's so much fun, and the realism just really does it for me. I like games like War Thunder, like you saw somebody invited me to play, Ace Combat, stuff like that, but Microsoft Flight Simulator, just something about it just holds a special place for me. I grew up playing these kind of games, so they come natural to me. There's the C-172 off to our left there. See if I can see it. There it is. They're at 3,600 feet. There's New Haven. So this plane's so big that the horizon you see there, which is where I'm using for my reference, is it looks like the plane's tilted down, but it's really not. If you look at my altitude, you'll see the altitude's holding heavy and steady. I know it's hard to see, but it's underneath the controller video there. The altitude's actually holding steady because I'm keeping the nose right at level. And I'm doing all this manually. There's been zero autopilot on this flight because there is none. This plane was not developed with any kind of autopilot or any kind of auto stabilization. So it's a fun fact, the hangar that this plane was built in is on the list of the National Register of Historic Places. So it cannot be altered or destroyed, torn down in any significant way. The look and feel of it has to maintain the ambiance of the original, so the exterior. The inside actually has been converted to office and event space, and it's owned by Google, believe it or not, which is pretty cool. We're following along the shoreline to the south there, heading towards New York City. We're about 60 nautical miles away. Like I said, you can see up ahead, you know New York City's coming because a lot of people fly around there, which is pretty cool. Let's go down and go a little closer to the ground, shall we? Give the people of New Haven a little show. flying by. So we're flying about 2,500 feet here. You can see some nice shots of the ground. About 53 nautical miles away from our destination. Fuel's looking good, 34%. Be flying out over the Atlantic Ocean here soon. Have anybody ever been to the Spruce Goose or seen it? The Hughes H-4? I would love to see it, but I'd have to get out to California to see that, which would be awesome. Maybe one day. There's a lot of people flying today. This plane was used during wartime. The one thing it would have lacked was anti-aircraft stuff. How would it fight back if it came under fire from enemy planes? Because the Germans had an air force. The Luftwaffe was, wasn't bad, wasn't the greatest, but it did pose a significant threat to planes in World War II. So you'd think this plane would have needed some covering planes, support planes, or some sort of a way to fight back. Because, while it was going to be meant to fly in what they called friendly skies, that was always subjective because the Germans extended their reach so far. The friendly waters were patrolled by U-boats. So, alright, so 42 nautical miles away. Gonna dive down again a bit here. So, some other fun facts while we're flying here. The Spruce Goose was not the only aircraft ever created with this kind of configuration. There were a bunch of others that never took off in a literal sense. So the Germans tried their hand at making some. They made the Blohm & Voss BV-238. and the P-200, which were flying boat designs, because they were, again, trying to copy the United States. There were a couple others over the years, the LaGuardia 631, the Martin JRM Mars, the Saunders Roe Princess, was a post-war large aircraft airliner flying boat, was again designed to carry people only, and the Curtiss Wright C-76 Caravan, all wood-type prototype transport plane from World War II. So you can see other people tried, really they never went anywhere. "37 nautical miles away." Just passing 6,500 feet. Off to our left there is Long Island. There's an A-20N flying by us up there. 16,000 feet. See behind us there, looking back. Pretty cool view. Passing down here below 6,000 feet. I'm going to start to bring our altitude down. Stay a lot lower. Bring it down to like 3,000 feet. Nautical miles to go. I'm going to go ahead here and move up this just a little bit here so you can get a better view of where we're headed here by looking at the instrumentation there. It basically has a VFR map for you, which is nice. Actually move this back down a little bit here. Gonna move over and get lined up to start our final approaches here. So I'm kind of going to parallel the coast here. And now pointing at LaGuardia again. Bring it forward to bring our altitude down again. Here, bring it down to about 3,000 feet. Let's try and hang there. I drifted up higher. Should be able to see the skyline soon. Keep the nose pitched down for a little bit here. It's a beautiful day out here as we approach LaGuardia. So as we get our approach going here, if you could click that like button and subscribe to Tech Gamers World, that would be totally awesome. Always gonna have new and exciting content from the world of video games and flight simulators dropping all the time, and I would love for everybody to be a part of it. And if you click that little bell, you'll be the first to be notified when I post new content. You can actually see LaGuardia up there. We're coming up on 10 nautical miles away here soon. We're out on 12 right now. airspace here.
New York approach Tecumseh 1982 Heavy is type Hughes H-4 Hercules 5 miles northeast of 7 November Tree, 2,400 feet. Request clearance to transition Bravo airspace.
Tecumseh 1982 Heavy, New York approach. Squawk 1711. Tecumseh 1982 Heavy, did you copy?
Squawk 1711 Tecumseh 1982 Heavy.
There we go.
Tecumseh 1982 Heavy radar contact 4 miles north of 7 November Tree, 2,100 feet. Clear through the Bravo airspace. Maintain on navigation.
Cleared through the Bravo airspace, Tecumseh 1982 Heavy.
Okay, good. Air traffic control is good. Start to slow it down here. We're going to land right up in the river here. So let's go ahead and bank it over this bridge. Flaps, get some flaps going here. This looks like a good landing spot. Keep out forward pitch. Gauge full flaps. And we have touchdown. And now we're just going to come to a nice leisurely stop. We have arrived. Now, what you would do is, obviously if you were in a boat like this, or a plane like this, you would find your designated parking spot, which, if this was a real plane and a real flight, would have already been predetermined for you. But since it's not for us, we're going to go ahead and see if we can turn here and park up next to these buildings. Yep, not trying to take off. And there we go. We have arrived right outside New York City. We flew today from Boston in a Hercules, also known as the Spruce Goose. Hope everyone enjoyed this video. As always, if you have anything you'd like to see, please drop a comment down below, and I will do my best to make it happen. If you could click that like button and subscribe to Tech Gamers World, I'm always going to have new and exciting content dropping all the time. Thanks a lot, and I will see you around. Keep on gaming.